Hi again, it's Chris from Haunted Earth. A few months ago I placed a video on YouTube entitled How to Find Out If Your House is Haunted. That was in response to a number of emails received from viewers who believe that their home might be visited by a paranormal activity or some other kind of spiritual anomaly. In the video I made a number of recommendations, and what I propose to do today is to go through those details again, because a lot of you do not appear to have found this video, and despite the fact that there are links to it on my frequently asked questions on the main page on my Constantine 99999 YouTube page. So let me just go through a few basics again, and then I can enlarge on that and go into more detail. You believe your home is haunted. Now, the general causes that I receive from people is that electrical equipment tends to switch itself on and off. And yes, indeed, that could be a paranormal related event. But unfortunately, you have to check for a natural explanation first. And a natural explanation could be A, that the equipment is indeed faulty, or perhaps there is some kind of a power fluctuation which is causing the equipment to switch itself off or on. Now, what for that you would need is an engineer to check your power supply and check the equipment. If you've carried out those inquiries and you're satisfied that everything is working quite normally, then there is a possibility that it might be paranormal activity. Now, adding a little bit further to that, if you watch taps, and because they're plumbers, they tend to refer a lot to that. It could also be your central heating system that might be at fault, particularly in the cause of, say, for example, pipes banging and that kind of thing. You need to get that checked too. So if you're satisfied everything is hunky-dory, then you can move to the first level. The first level would be, I would suggest, is using a tape recorder or a digital voice recorder. Either is fine. I prefer tape because it's easier to wind back to check any responses to questions. Now, questions. The first question you would ask would be, who are you? And you must allow at least a 30-second phase from the question before you go to the next one, because it will give plenty of time for any spiritual presence to answer and allow you to review and make sure that you've got a response. It may not work the first time, it may not work the third time, but if it is haunted, you will get a response at some point. I firmly believe in EVP. I think electronic voice phenomena is one of the key areas to actually opening people's awareness to the existence of the paranormal. So okay, you've got your first response, you've checked it, you've allowed 30 seconds, then ask another question. The question could be simply, what do you want? And so on and so forth. That would be a very good guide to finding out whether your home is haunted. And then you can develop upon that theme. And for that, I would get a video camcorder. I use two varieties in stock. The first one that I've got here is a Sony handheld mini DV camcorder. To be honest with you, these are absolutely brilliant. If I'm daytime shooting or filming in low light, it's no problem at all. But for night shot work, and this is infrared capable, so it is a night shot camcorder, that's important too, it's not very good. It projects a small ball of light and reduces the rest of the room into complete and utter darkness. So you're actually missing out on a lot of information and a lot of activity that could be occurring there. The beauty of one of these, because it is digital, all you need to do is connect it to your PC and you can download the videotape, and hey presto, you've got a video. My preference always will be for the older high 8 tape analog camcorders. This is the stock one we use on the investigations. Now, this is far superior to the mini DV because of its size. It has a much bigger receptor for infrared. Therefore, it projects more infrared light and covers a much wider radius. So this will guarantee more opportunity of capturing a full video examination of a room rather than using a mini DV. And I've noticed that on TV programs, mini DVs are used a lot, but they use substitute backup lighting, or they use special infrared illuminators in boxes which are placed on the floor to project much more light into a room. Well, obviously they're going to cost a lot of money, and I know that most people can't afford the luxury of such equipment, so my recommendation would be to buy one of these camcorders. You can pick these up on eBay for around, say, a full and complete set, which is all the leads, the manuals and batteries, for between £50 and £75, depending on condition. If it's just a camcorder in good working order on its own, I would look around the £35 to £40 mark. Now, the only problem with these camcorders, although they're absolutely brilliant, they are terrible for transferring video from analog to digital onto your computer. You can buy pieces of equipment that you can feed it through, but I find that the audio tends to lag behind the video, so it's working out of sync, and the quality is not particularly good. So I invested in a DVD recorder. Now that is absolutely perfect for my use, because all I have to do is connect this using the RCA sockets here on the side. You can see the RCA plugs here. Connect that to a lead, run that into your DVD recorder, and you can burn off an entire video onto disc. Once you've got that, all you have to do then is insert it into your PC, and you've got a copy of the event. So these are well worth the investment. You'll notice that the battery I've got on here is much bigger than the standard. These house brick batteries work for about 8 hours, and if you're filming all night, you need a reliable power supply, and these are it. Okay, so you've done some video work and you've done your EVP, and of course remember, on camcorders you can capture EVP quite easily. In fact, virtually all of my EVP comes off camcorders, digital or non-digital. But another important tool to have, and this is a digital still camera. Now these have come into a lot of criticism from some skeptics, because they argue that these cameras, and also as with digital camcorders, pick up a lot of dust. I even read a report somewhere that a major Japanese manufacturer had cured the problem of dust anomalies appearing on camera. Well, this is quite a recent one, and it still picks up what they call dust, which I would call orbs. Now here is the problem with orbs and dust. How can you tell the difference? The problem with these cameras, they can only record things that are static really, so you get a still image. It doesn't really convey much about the object that you've taken a photograph of. People send me loads of pictures of orbs, and in all fairness, they could be anything. I need to have it corroborated by some other kind of activity. Actually seeing it on video would determine, in my opinion, through experience, whether or not it's actually orb activity. Now, what is the difference between dust and orbs? Well, there's quite a wide gulf actually. In most rooms, the air is absolutely thick with millions and millions of tiny dust particulates. Now, these tiny dust particulates mostly are not picked up on any camera. Now, most people's contention is that orbs are dust, and if that is the case, why don't I pick up these millions and millions of dust particulates? And yet, why is it on occasions I can walk into a room that is very, very dusty and pick up loads of orb activity, and go back an hour later in the same dusty room and there is no orb activity? So we need to look at this phenomena in more detail. Okay, another problem is bugs. Let's eliminate bugs first of all. That's quite simple. When an insect flies on camcorder, it tends to swagger from side to side. Spiritual orbs tend to move very positively in a direct line. And in my own home, because of the interaction I have with the activity in the master bedroom, they tend to come to me directly. There's no wavering, there's no slow down and speed up. It tends to happen in one straight journey, literally from A to B in one movement. Dust, on the other hand, when you rake dust up, it tends to move very, very quickly at first, and then it slows down, and then it distributes itself all over the place. So there is a big difference between spiritual orbs and dust. And if you're a skeptic and you simply do not believe in orbs, well, that's fine. I'm not here to try and convince you that I'm right. I'm only here to share what activity I've captured on camera with other people who are interested. So if you're not interested, please don't bug me and leave stupid, inane comments. At the end of the day, you cannot prove conclusively that the paranormal does not exist, and equally, I cannot prove conclusively that it does exist. I can only venture an opinion backed up with studies, and that's the entire breadth of my work at the moment. Okay, so we touched on digital still cameras. What they are particularly good for is, for example, what I would describe as ectomist. When we're on the haunted airfield, that is a great place for capturing that kind of activity. So what is ectomist and what is an orb? Well, let's explore what an orb is. An orb is a spiritual presence that moves by the process of thought. As it enters into a room or location, you'll notice that the air can sometimes get colder, and generally that's what happens. On the rarefied occasions, and I've only experienced it once in America, it actually got warmer, and that was quite weird and quite unique, because this is a cold source energy. It's not a living energy in the sense that we as mammals are warm-blooded and we can move and we can communicate with each other in a physical form, and our bodies generate heat. It is a cold source energy. How does it move? I believe it moves by the process of thought. It actually thinks about where it wants to go to, and it can arrive there. Another question people ask me, if orbs are photographed in a particular location and there are masses of them, does that necessarily mean that there are a large number of spiritual presences there? Well, obviously it doesn't actually. Most orb presences are in the singular. And as they move into a location, it's an expanding consciousness of thought. As it expands out and fills the room grows colder as the energy spreads. And if you take a photograph, you're going to get a massive orb energy. Now, quite often it goes to the next level where it actually breaks up into something akin to a mist. And that mist can take on a very firmly defined shape. For example, on the airfield, I've had partial figures. I've had tentacles coming from a wall. Some very weird phenomena. But it's a useful guide to remember also that when you're taking still photographs, especially when it's cold, make sure that what you're not picking up on your camera is your own cold breath, or alternately if you're smoking a cigarette, because if you're doing both of those things, then the stuff that you pick up on camera is obviously contaminated and worthless. Okay. Another useful tool on paranormal examinations, EMFs. Electromagnetic field detectors. Now these are used mostly, well this was for industrial purpose, to actually find a location of wiring in a wall and that kind of thing. This is the K2, which is very, very popular both in the UK, Europe and the USA. The K2 was designed specifically for paranormal investigation, yet it's basically the same piece of equipment as the other one I'm holding in my hand. I have used these on investigations, but I've also noticed that these things do not register when there is a paranormal event occurring. I've actually seen stuff in front of me occurring and videoed it, and at the same time I've used a K2 or one of these, and it hasn't registered any activity. So these really, I mean, I cannot prove the authenticity of these apparatus for paranormal investigation. It's great for detecting pipes, no problems at all, and wiring and power supplies, but it's absolutely useless, in my opinion, for my work, because I cannot rely on it, because I've seen paranormal activity, I've recorded it, and these things have not registered with it. And also, when I have picked up a paranormal event using both these two pieces of equipment, one has worked on some occasions, whilst the other one hasn't worked, and vice versa. So how accurate are these? We don't really know, do we? All we know is that on occasions they can pick up some kind of paranormal activity. So I tend to use my own senses, which I'll come to in a minute. Another useful tool on investigations, these are quite expensive, is a laser thermometer. Now these can work in centigrade or in Fahrenheit. They're very, very useful because if the temperature in the room is starting to drop and you need to find out what, the exact coldness of this particular temperature, this device will register it for you. But the only problem is that on a camcorder, it will show as a tiny ball of energy. And that can be confused for orb activity. And I have seen pathetic efforts by some individuals to fake that activity using one of these. So if you're going to use a laser thermometer, be wary of the fact that it could accidentally show on film, and if it does that, it will discredit what you've captured. So be very, very careful. And the last and most essential piece of equipment is a torch or flashlight. I've got one of those 28 LED torch flashlights here. It runs off 3 AAA batteries, very, very small batteries. It's very small, very compact. It fits in my pocket, unlike the earlier mag lights, those big torches that you used to wander around with. These are much smaller and much more powerful by comparison, and they throw out quite a good beam of light. If you can buy one of these, I picked up a batch of 10 for around £5 each. That's say $10, including postage and packing from China. They are very, very useful. On-off switch at the back, and as you can see, that's quite a powerful beam of light. My next subject will be, and it's always a bone of contention with other people, the use of a Ouija board on paranormal investigation. I realise that there are people on YouTube who basically resort to using a Ouija board every time they carry out some kind of paranormal investigation. And because of it, I get a lot of people writing to me who have used the Ouija board and they have complained of problems in their own home as a result of it. So why does that happen? Well, the Ouija board is a very useful tool if it's in the right hands. If you're an amateur or somebody who really hasn't been into this for a long, long time, it's a very dangerous item. I've got one here. I've actually got around 5 in my collection. I think artistically, I think they're quite beautiful. They're very attractive. This one here was manufactured in America by Parker Brothers. And as you can see, a lot of you get the name mixed up, Ouija. It's actually Ouija in French and in German, which means yes, yes. And if you look at the board, you can see that it's marked with the alphabet A to Z, goodbye for signing off, and also 1 to 0, and yes and no at the top. And you use a planchette, which is like a little plastic pointer. You move it across the board, or the spirit moves it across the board, and it will spell out a message. Sounds very simple and straightforward, a great aid to paranormal investigation. Well, Parker Brothers and Waddingtons in England, who manufactured them, were selling it as a family game. And in fact, it's a very, very dangerous thing. Why is it dangerous? Put it this way. Can you imagine leaving your front door open and inviting anybody to come into your home and to do whatever they like? And in fact, decide to stay? Because that's what a Ouija board can be. It can open your home as a portal to very low-life spiritual entities. Okay, some people who don't believe in it think it's a load of rubbish. Well, that's fine. If they think it's a load of rubbish, they won't bother using the board. But those of you that have, you've got a few friends round, you've had a few drinks, which is bad. You should not drink alcohol when you're doing this. And things have got out of control, totally out of control. My advice to anybody is never ever use a Ouija board, particularly in your own home or at a friend's house. They are dangerous. Really, really dangerous. They can mess with your head. They can make you feel depressed. And when you're depressed, they feed off that negative energy because they're negative low-life spirits themselves. Very, very dangerous. It makes me mad, very mad, when I see people using these things on YouTube because a lot of impressionable kids are going out making up their own Ouija board or actually buying one or borrowing them. Please, please, please do not use a Ouija board. There are other ways, as I've already described to you, of finding out whether your home is haunted without actually making your home haunted, because that's what they will do. And they can be very dangerous. Don't get me wrong here, when I was very young, I played and dabbled around with them when I was about 15. And I can tell you a story very, very quickly on the use of a Ouija board. I was around a friend's house, and we picked up, allegedly, an African tribal chieftain in spirit. And I tell you what, this is absolutely gospel. I could hear a drum banging away in the corner of the room, and it terrified us both. And before that happened, it spelled out, "I'm going to attack you." I left his house, it was probably around about 10 o'clock at night, and I was absolutely mortified. I was really frightened, I really was. And on the way home, and this is absolutely true, a cat just jumped on top of me from a garden wall. It terrified the living daylights out of me, and I ran all the way home. Now that is probably just a coincidence, but it does tell you the amount of fear that the use of this board can generate. And another problem with using a Ouija board is particularly on video. How do you know that the people in the video aren't pushing the planchette to spell out the words that they want to spell out? In other words, it's not already pre-configured what will happen. It's not a very accurate way of measuring paranormal activity because it's open to abuse. It's open to abuse by the users, and it's open to abuse by low-life spiritual entities. So whatever you do, please do not use Ouija boards. They're not cool, they're dangerous. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me for this informative video. Well, I hope it's informative. I'll be back again very shortly with another video on my own belief in spirituality. Until then, goodbye.